Three, two, one. Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between and beyond, welcome. My name is Joshua Idehen, and I am here with the Don Dada, the celebrated, highly acclaimed, T.S. Eliot winning, one of the greatest spoken word poets in the UK and beyond, the most amazing, one of my biggest inspirations, the most amazing Anthony Joseph. Wow. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. You know, the sun is out.
The sun is out
in London, which is a rare thing. And yeah.
We are here in celebration of your new album, Rowing Up River to Get Our Names Back. Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
that's right.
And he is coming down to Stockholm, 30th of May. So this is just an introduction, a get to know. So you guys over there are prepared for the majesty that is coming towards you. Right. First off, congratulations on the album.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the album. I've listened to it twice now.
Thank you.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. But let's get into it. Like, how do you introduce yourself? If someone has never heard of Anthony Joseph, you know, they might have heard of Anthony Johnson. They might have heard of Anthony Joshua, but they never heard of. So where do you want them to begin?
Man, I'm a poet, you know. As I've gotten older, you know, as I've sort of progressed through this thing called a career, it's what I define myself as changed a lot. So at first I was a writer, then I was a musician, then I was a spoken word artist, and I was just. But now I'm just a poet. I'm a poet, which means that, you know, poetry is an umbrella term. You know, you can find poetry in a lot of different forms and genres. So I'm a poet that is able to work across genres. You know, music, even teaching is a form of poetry in a way. So yeah, I'm a poet.
Yeah, I get your teaching being a form of poetry.
Yeah, it's a performance.
Yeah. Some of the kids bring out the performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. I mean, speaking on poetry and creativity, how did it come to you? Is it something you have to chase, or is it something that finds its way to you, or is it a mix of the two?
I think it's a mix of the two. I think that, you know, there's a saying that poets are born, you're born a poet. I don't know if that's entirely true. But I do know that the circumstances of my life, my early life, pushed me into an area where the word was really important, and imagination and using the word as a way of negotiating the world became really important. You know, I grew up with my grandparents. I was the only kid in the house, and I grew up surrounded by nature in Trinidad. And, you know, that, just certain traumas of childhood or whatever forced me to have a very introverted way of dealing with language. So that helped to make me a poet. But I think finding out that that's your gift is just part of the process. You don't have to cultivate it. You gotta rear this thing up. You gotta sort of feed it, which is where discipline comes in, you know. So at some point I realized I was a poet, and I kind of dedicated myself and my energy and became very disciplined about writing, and that helped. So I think you need both. I think you need the inspiration as well as the discipline.
Cool. Well, you know. How would you describe your style of poetry?
I can't describe it. It's not for me to describe it. You know, it's
how would others describe it?
Well, I have a friend of mine, a friend who's a professor in California, Laurie Shire, who many years ago described it as diasporic avant-garde, which kind of makes sense. And
that's kind of spot on, right?
Yeah, diasporic avant-garde. So that's it. But, you know, essentially, I'm a Caribbean poet. I'm a Caribbean poet who is inspired by the Caribbean aesthetic, the Caribbean life, Caribbean use of language, and how that is merged into a kind of Eurocentric Western apparatus. You know, how do you take one experience and sort of transliterate it using English, standard English or whatever, or standard English literature? How do you frame your experience within that and create something new? So the new is what I try to create. The space between the beats.
Seriously.
I think that's what you do as well.
Yeah.
I think that's what, to be honest, I think that's what all sort of what you call post-colonial or black poets do. We're trying to find a voice.
Yeah, but you take it to an extra level. There's a line kind of like in the first song, or the one you did with Eska, which I think heavy in the gun's breath or something like that.
Yes.
What was the line? Do you remember?
Heavy with the gun of breath.
Heavy with the gun of breath. And I remember that when you hear one of them lines, you have to stop the tape.
Yeah.
Stop the tape.
Yeah.
You're like Obama, like stop the tape. Stop it. Stop it right there.
Heavy with the gun.
I need to catch that again. All right, cool. Is there anything that has creatively surprised you of late? Anything that showed up in your work that you didn't expect?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have to think. I guess a sense of having. I mean, what's surprising me now? I'm working on a new collection. I'm working on my new collection of poems, and I've been, I take a long time.
Hold on. Let me just ask. Did you not just come up with collection last year? What? Slow down.
No, wait. Yeah.
Death is not chasing you.
No, I know.
It's last year you were writing something else. Oh my god.
Nah, I'm working all the time. So I've got this.
Apparently.
Yeah. So I got this new collection coming out, and one of the things that creatively surprised me is there's a point where the poem matures, and it always surprises me at which point it matures. You work at it. I do a lot of editing over years and years and years and years, and then in one night you look at the poem and you're like, yeah, wow, that's finished. And that's a beautiful. I don't know if it's a surprise, but it surprises you in the sense that you're not what you started with isn't usually the thing that emerges at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you get to this poem and you're like, damn. You're like, oh my god.
I don't know. I mean, I only have one kid, right? And so my whole understanding of fatherhood is from that. And it's like, what I imagine my child would be is completely different from what she's become. And in that way, it's been the same with some poems of mine.
But that's what you call a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, it's a pleasant surprise. Pleasant sometimes. Okay, what moves you right now? What's a creative piece of work in any art form that has stuck in your head lately?
Oh gosh, I just came back from Trinidad, so I've been listening to a lot of calypso
Some of us
music.
don't get to travel like that, but carry on.
I know. No,
carry on. We were talking about the sun just now, but carry on.
That's kind of home to me. So I've been listening to a lot of calypso music, a lot of soca and Caribbean music from the late 70s, early 80s, that particular period. There was something in the music before. I mean, it's the point in a lot of music of that time where they stopped using live drummers and started using drum machines for most of the music. So there's that crossover period where it's coming up to the end of the live drummer period. It's sort of early 80s. That is a very rich and funky period in Caribbean music and calypso music especially. So I'm listening to a lot of that. Can you give the people some examples? Some names?
Just so
I'm listening to a guy called Scrunter, who's a calypso singer called Scrunter. I'm listening to the Mighty Shadow, who a lot of people might have heard of. I'm listening to a guy actually called the Mighty Trini, who is a white calypsonian, which is quite a rare thing in Trinidad culture, but he's amazing. The songs are amazing. I'm listening to Black Stallion. I mean, I could go on and on, but that period, late 70s, early 80s, in soca music, for me, I guess because I just came back from Trinidad, I'm still homesick. So that's feeding. Yeah, that's all I'm listening to.
So that's Mighty Trini.
Mighty Trini, yeah. Mighty Shadow. Scrunter. A lot of people.
Yeah. No, that's enough. That's enough. You got your homework now. It's got. Yeah. All right, cool. You've worked with many musicians in your time. Obviously, you had Michelle Escoffier.
Endegocello.
Yeah, complete different Michelle. Endegocello. You've worked with recently on this album that you just came out with. You've worked with Eska and Dave Okomu. Like, what makes a creative partnership click with you?
It is. It's something beyond music. to be honest. It's just how you get along with someone, how your spirit takes them, how your spirit takes to someone. Someone could be an amazing musician and you just can't gel with them. I'm sure you've had that experience where they're amazing musician, but your spirit doesn't take them.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right. There's an awkwardness or there's something, But when your spirit gravitates to someone and you feel close to them, even in the first meetings, the first couple of meetings, you're like, yeah, this person, I could hang with this person. I can feel them. So that's what it is. When I worked with Michelle, it was like that. I mean, me and Michelle met in a really weird, surprising way, but instantly there was a connection. With Dave, yeah, likewise. I worked on Dave's album, his last album, I Come From Love, and just getting into the studio with him, working on these 2 tracks with him, I was like, you know what? I want to work with this dude. This guy's a beautiful soul, So yeah, it's the connection, it's the human connection. Yeah, rather than their musicality and
Okay. Yeah, you kind of feel like if you gel with them as a person,
the music will follow.
The music will follow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely get that. I completely
absolutely.
get that. Yeah. If say 50 years from now, right? I understand there's peace on earth because we're all gone.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Aliens have landed, right?
Yeah.
And they discovered this treasure trove.
Yeah.
Anthony Joseph,
Right.
The collection, the ultimate collection. Yeah, they got a hard drive and everything in there. What do you want them to take from it?
Wow. I mean, what do to take from it?
Yeah. I mean, what do you want them to get from it? Like, it's like, okay, forget not aliens, just this new generation of kids who just like they're looking for something to sample and they discover your stuff. What do you want them to take from it?
I think I don't know. I mean, I think the work that I do with music is quite unique in the sense that I built it up from the ground. I built it up from a very simple idea and built it up over almost 20 years now. So I'd like them to take the fact that it's a singular voice. It's something different. And it shows you another aspect of being a Caribbean person in the UK, what that is like. What was that like during this period of time? It kind of gives you an accurate reflection of a particular time and a particular style of music, I guess. I mean, a particular Caribbeanness in exile.
Yeah, no, I get with that. I think,
but I'm not there's a lot of politics in the music. There's a lot of politics in the words and the ideas, and I want them to get that too. But I wouldn't say that I'm primarily a political poet. That's like I'm not like someone like Gil Scott Heron or the last poets. They did it a lot better.
No. We don't do that in this house.
We don't
do that in this house, right? We hand flowers, but not at the cost of our own gardens. Nope.
Okay. No. I like that.
Yeah, because you, I think you are continuing that legacy,
Yeah,
but in
like
your
that.
own
Thank
lane,
you.
in your
I
own
appreciate
style.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
I think what I've always loved about your work is that it is uncompromising in its own way. Like you do, I mean, it's eloquent. It's stuff that, especially with this new record, it's I think your most successful yet. Right.
Thank you.
And you do give space for people to kind of like come in and share a boogie, and there's enough conventionality in there that people can relate to it. But when it comes to the words, you're like, fam, here's where I'm planting my flag. You're coming to me, and I think that is it's great to see kind of like a black man, making music in that way. That is sort of asking people to come to them, especially because when you listen to, like, for example, US hip hop, it does have its own kind of like frameworks and its own style of speaking, where you have to get a dictionary or some kind of a glossary of terms, and that's what American hip hop has been. And I think it's rare to see spoken word music or poetry or even just kind of like music from the UK that moves in that sense of confidence, right? And is political, and is unashamedly black, and is kind of like assured of itself. And you've done that since day dot, right? So we ain't hearing none of that. We ain't hearing none of that. Not me and you, Scott. No,
you said it. You said it better than I could articulate it. I'm grateful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, so your new album that I can't stop gushing about because it is just amazing. Rowing Up River to Get Our Names Back. What was the seed of it? What are you trying to reclaim, discover, or reframe anything?
Well, it is. I call it an Afrofuturist album. when I started to work with Dave, one of the things that attracted me to working with Dave is his use of electronics and his use of sort of different genres of music. And his music is, you listen to Dave's music, it's not limited to anything. You can't find a name for it. It's post-punk, Afrobeat, jazz, funk, I don't know. Some mixture stuff. And I wanted some of that energy in the music. I always wanted to make a psychedelic, blissed out, grooved out album. I always wanted to do that. But I couldn't find the right personnel or the right, producer, and Dave was the one. And I thought I would use the album and the opportunity to work with Dave as a way of making a kind of a follow-up or kind of a sequel to a book that I wrote many years ago called The African Origins of UFOs.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I wanted to explore some of the ideas and themes around that, so I wrote accordingly. I wrote a few of the pieces directly referred to that and sort of take from that.
Listening to the album, right, the second time, and don't, because I'm still digesting. I'm still trying to okay, I listen to it and I'm like, what does this song mean? Okay, but on the first listen, definitely on the first listen, I got this sense, and I might be wrong, that it kind of feels like it's set in a party.
Wow!
Right? There's so much reference to kind of like music and the act of making music, the drummers and the sounds and whatever. And I don't know, it kind of felt like I was looking at that Marvin Gaye front cover, you just posted that, like, I'm gonna write a poem about the sea, right? And you're writing about this person performing and this thing that's happening over here. Is that like is that an accurate interpretation?
I think any interpretation like that is accurate. It's not something that I thought of when I was doing it. But there's one song on the album, Black History, which is
Black History. That's the one. That's the one that kind of framed it for me.
Well, that is actually, it's a house party. It's it's remembering the house parties me and my family used to have back in the day, back in Trinity in the 80s. So that is definitely that Marvin Gaye thing where everyone's dancing and drinking, where the women especially are in the kitchen smoking and drinking. And I've never seen I never saw my grandmother smoke, but there she was smoking, drinking gin, gossiping, talking, and the woman, just control the kitchen area. So that was amazing. So that is what that piece is about. But to say that I've never thought of it as framing the album, but that is great. I like that. I think I'll steal it.
Yeah, you should because I think it was when I listened to the first two songs, and they were kind of like, they were constant like metaphorical references to music making and party going, and I was like, oh, this is so great, like, this must be the foundation where everything else is in. And so every song I listened to was kind of like, am I in another part of this house party where stuff happens? And I'm like, wow, okay. So I'm like super jazzed to see this kind of like interpreted line, right? All right. Still got some more questions. You said that Black stories are often passed down in music, in family, not just through books. How does this idea shape the record?
How does it shape the record? Well, I've always had this idea about history, about especially Caribbean history. What we have to realize, I think it's common for a lot of places that have been colonized, let's say, that a lot of the history is sort of removed, and it's hard to find out what happened because a lot of it wasn't written down. And in the absence of a history that you could definitely go and read a book and trace, the poets, the musicians, the griots, the artists become the historians. It's on us, it's on you, it's on me to sort of become a historian of our people. That's part of the role of us, because so much has been lost. So I've always had that view on what Black history was. So that frames all my work in a way, because what I use is the personal to reflect the universal. I believe the personal is the universal. So when I talk about my family having a party and the women smoking and drinking, I'm talking about not just them, but I'm showing you a universal idea of blackness, a universal idea of family, black families, which is also part of our history, which is an integral part of our history beyond this island was colonized in 18 something, blah blah blah, and then this general and that general, and they had, that history is only part.
Yeah, it's quite linear.
It's linear. We need the families. We need to know. My great grandfather used to work on a ship, and this is what he did. My aunt used to do this. My father, blah blah blah. That is also your history.
No,
That's what I think.
oh, nice. So, one something I wanted to make mention, and again, and I'm glad it's in the questions. I wrote it down. Was is it fair to say that you use surrealism in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I consider myself a surrealist poet.
Okay,
Absolutely.
and futurism as well.
Yeah, future. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if futurism is a particular genre of poetry. Right?
Okay,
I don't think so. I mean,
our discussion for a later time. But let's focus on
we should talk about it.
let's focus on surrealism. Is that a tool that you employ to kind of like tackle past injustices and present day issues? Like, how does it work? How do you use it within your work?
It is simply about the use of language and the idea of risk. What I mean is that at some point I realized, after writing many years, I've been writing since I was about 11, which is a long time. At some point I realized that the places in the poems that really shocked me and moved me and had an impact on me were the places where language broke down, where there was a breakage and a slippage in language and syntax, where I was reaching to say something and I didn't quite get it, and the language breaks and creates something really amazing. And I didn't know what that was until I came here and started reading and exploring different ideas, and realized that the surrealists were doing a similar thing, and they would consistently try to break the language.
Yeah.
And surrealism is a political tool as well. It's a tool that a lot of Black poets have used to transcend the boundaries and constraints of Western literary thought. So we use surrealism as like someone like Aimé Césaire did, to break out of the prison of language. So I started exploring that further and further and further. And now I think, surrealism shows up in the idea that, if I try to say, I'm reaching for something in language and it doesn't quite get there, I can still put it on the page. I can put that break and that slippage. And sometimes those images and that breaking is the most beautiful thing. So the impact of surrealism now is more on process, on the way the work is created, the taking of risk, the sometimes automatic writing. Sometimes I write things which are just stream of unconsciousness.
I mean, as a writer myself, one of my big motivators is to be understood. And I guess I always write with my inner critic speaks from the point of what will people understand this.
Right.
So I'm just kind of wondering, do you have that inner critic, and how do you deal with it if you do?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and the answer is no. The answer is I don't.
Please stop you.
It's an important question. The answer is fuck that.
I don't have the burden of being understood. I don't have that, because I believe that like all the great art, there are elements of great art that you can't understand, and that's okay, and that you have. I think poetry especially gives you room to have mystery. So there's definitely spaces in the poems that are mysterious, and people will read it and read it again, and wouldn't figure it out. But eventually they will come to an understanding. The mind will always come to an understanding of a thing. Even if it's incongruous, they will find a meaning to it. And that's okay. They create their own meanings in that case. They find themselves in the text. And that's fine. So sometimes there is no burden to be understood. There's some poems, though, and some images that I definitely want people to understand, and I would work hard to make it clear. But it depends on the poem. It depends on the poem. Yeah.
It's a brilliant answer. You said that writing can be like a jazz solo, finding new ways to say old things.
Nah.
Do you see a boundary between music and poetry, or is it all one?
I think it's one. For me, it's unfair to say that it's the same thing, because It is clearly, it's a different approach, different mediums, you know. There's something about music that poetry doesn't have, and what that is immediacy. A poem, you can take a poem in a book and read it on the bus. You can contemplate it, you can read the line again, you can, you know. But with music, it's in the moment.
Yeah.
You know, and the performance of music is in the moment. If you perform with a band, you can't press pause and do that again. You're in the zone, you know what I mean? So there's a difference there. That's a fundamental difference. But the approach that you take towards music, in that you are reaching for a pure expression of yourself, an honest expression, is the same that I think a lot of poets bring to the work. So there's that correlation there, and there's also aesthetically there's a sort of concentration on sound and rhythm, which you find with both poets and musicians. We're really concerned about not just what I'm saying, but how am I going to say it?
Yeah.
Is it beautiful? Does it sound funky? Does it swing?
Yeah.
How do I say this? The same with a musician playing a solo. They're like, you know, how do I do this in a way that, as I said, that hasn't been said before? I think that's what poetry is about. It's about finding ways of saying things that haven't been said before, or finding ways of using language in ways that are unique.
Yeah. When you make you make an album,
Yeah.
right? Do you write in the same way as when you be writing a poem for the page?
Yes and no. It varies. You know, some poems, some things on the album end up being created just for the album, based on the music that I'm given. So, for instance, there's a couple of things that Dave sent to me, demos that Dave sent to me that I worked with and listened to constantly, and words came out of that listening process, which is great, but that's a different process. There's some other things that were already written that I thought, you know what, that will work with this space.
Yeah.
And then you put it onto the music and try a few things. You edit and shape it and shape it and shape it. I always like that, you know, because I don't play an instrument myself, I think it's a good thing that I don't, because I come to the music having a sense that the music is equal to the words, and that my element is just an instrument within the music, rather than my words that just have to be the thing.
Yeah.
You know? Some poets are like that, but my way is like, you know, the music is just as important, man. I got to work with the music, you know.
Hey, how's that been across kind of like all of your music and all the albums, sort of being in a band, surrounded by musicians, and performing?
Yeah, it's evolved. It's evolved, man. It's evolved. When I first started the Spasm Band, way back, first couple albums.
I remember the Spasm Band.
Yeah. When we first started, it was very organic. It was more jam based and created in the studio, and just, you know, we'd have a riff that we'd explore and develop, and you know, put some changes in here and there and whatever. But it was very organic, like free jazz almost. And then eventually, the more albums you make, the more successful they become. You begin to work with producers. And some producers, like Michel, for instance, came and said, this is what we have, this is what I want you to do. I want you to read this poem like this. So there's a lack of freedom there, but if you give yourself over to the process and trust in the producer, like I trusted Michel, you end up with something pretty amazing. And then there's, you know, there's other ways that different producers work. You know, Jason Yard, who I worked with as well.
Jason Yard. Yeah.
He's slightly like Michel in that he would say, this is the arrangement. You got to find a way to fit yourself into that. I can shift a few bars here and there, but I want you to find a way, and it forces you to create forces you to be muscular and flexible. It's great. And then Dave is another thing. Dave is more deceptive.
Deceptive.
He's deceptive. He would say, this is the music, but, you know, feel free to interpret it as you wish. But as you're interpreting it, the music is changing around you. I have moved the place. Yeah, exactly. You gotta keep up.
Yeah, keep up. That was yesterday's plate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of performances, you were going to perform in Fasching.
Yeah.
Have you performed there before?
I don't remember. I know we've definitely played in Stockholm. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, almost 20 years with the band. So It's possible. I don't
Possible.
remember.
Okay. What are you bringing to Fasching this time?
Oh, what are we bringing? People
you
always
bringing?
ask that. Well, I'm bringing. Oh, I'm bringing.
Well, okay. Let's start with what kind of atmosphere do you hope to create there?
My gigs are always a ceremony. I find they always a ceremony, an invitation to the audience, and then an explosion. So it always starts kind of measured and slowly and develops into a rich kind of ritualistic thing. So yeah, I guess I learned that from going to the Baptist church when I was a kid. That, we start slowly and then everyone gets involved. So what I want to create is a communal feeling of joy with the audience. So that's what we
You heard it here first, man. If you are low on joy, Anthony Joseph, 30th of May, you have to be there. You have to be there.
Yeah.
What are you hoping to? Okay, wait. You are hoping to leave them feeling joy. So
I'm hoping to leave them feeling joyous, but joy is not always laughter and giggling. Sometimes joy is just a quiet contemplation of a thing.
It's
So
cathartic.
we're getting all of that.
Yeah. A well-rounded joy.
Yes.
A joy for all seasons.
That's right.
Awesome. All right. So some closing questions.
Yeah.
Can you describe your upcoming show in one word?
Transcendent.
Transcendent. Is there an artist you want everyone to be listening to right now?
Come back to me. Okay?
Hey! Oh my God! Nobody get names. Okay. Something you are looking forward to this year?
Having time to finish my new collection. I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, yeah, he's already released one collection, already released one album, and the man just can't wait.
Actually,
Can't wait.
Another thing, if I could add
Okay,
two
go
things.
on.
I'm going to be doing a short sort of US reading tour later in the year. I'm looking forward to that. Going to the US, going to New York and Chicago and Miami.
You know what you should look forward to? A holiday. You should look forward to sleep. You should look forward to some sleep. You should clear your kindness. So the rest of us can do something.
True.
Anthony Joseph, always a pleasure.
Man. Thank you so
Never
much.
sure. It's the 30th of May. You have to be there. If you love good spoken word, if you love, because this album, right, it's like, imagine if D'Angelo finished playing and then everyone didn't move and then Mike just came up and just continued that sound. That's what it sounds like. It's got Afrobeat, it's got jazz, it's got new soul, Dave Okumu, Eska. It's going to be an amazing show. 30th of May, Fasching. Buy your tickets. Anthony Joseph.
Yeah.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, thank you.
All
See you
right.
there.
See you there.